specimens? Frost whispered back, his military discipline momentarily cracking. That fits with the transmission patterns. They've been monitoring us for centuries, not decades. We nodded, hastily tucking her scanner into the lining of her boot as the ship's A announced final approach procedures. Through the viewport, the Council station revealed its true scale. A megastructure encircling the pulsating neutron star like an artificial horizon. Its surface dotted with what appeared to be biodomes, housing thousands of different atmospheric conditions. "Remember the protocol," Frost murmured, straightening his uniform. "No weapons, no aggressive posture. We represent 4 billion humans who don't know if they'll see tomorrow. And don't trust the translators they provide," Wei added, her fingers unconsciously tracing the small scar behind her ear where Earth's scientific coalition had implanted their own device. A risky procedure performed mere hours before departure. Their language tech might have secondary functions. The ship shuddered as it passed through a series of energy fields, each one stripping away another layer of their vessel's functionality. Propulsion, weapons systems, though they carried none, and finally life support fell under external control. The message was clear. Their existence now depended entirely on the Council's goodwill. As the docking sequence completed, Wei caught Frost studying a group of beings visible through an observation port. Entities composed of interlocking geometric shapes that shifted configuration in response to some unseen stimulus. "I've spent my career studying theoretical xenolinguistics," Wei said quietly, imagining how truly alien minds might conceptualize reality. But this, she gestured toward a passing entity, seemingly a cloud of luminescent particles maintaining perfect synchronization. "This exceeds everything Earth has postulated." Frost's cybernetic eye whirred almost imperceptibly, recording everything. "That one's watching us specifically," he noted, indicating a tall, willowy figure whose translucent skin revealed complex circulatory systems pumping iridescent fluids. Different posture than the others. Almost anticipatory. The airlock cycled, releasing a mist that coated their skin and clothing. A decontamination procedure or something more invasive, they couldn't tell. 4 Sentinel drones, hovering spheres with multiple appendages, surrounded them as the inner door dissolved rather than opened. "Welcome, representatives of species 4671B," came a voice directly in their minds, bypassing their eardrums entirely. "You will now be processed for Council appearance." Wei felt her heart hammering, but kept her expression neutral as they were escorted down a corridor that seemed to extend and contract with their movement, its architecture defying Euclidean geometry. The walls themselves displayed what appeared to be evolutionary trees of countless worlds. And with a chill, she noticed Earth's branch was marked with a pulsing red indicator. "Jackson," she breathed, barely audible. "Look at the structural design. These chambers, they're identical to the sketches found in the Sumerian tablets at Göbekli Tepe." Frost's expression didn't change, but she caught the slight narrowing of his eyes. The ancient carvings had been dismissed as religious iconography for centuries. Now they stood revealed as something far more disturbing. Proof that the Council had been evaluating humanity since the dawn of civilization. They were not Earth's first contact with the Cosmic Council. They were merely its final assessment. The temporal dampening field. Wei had studied theoretical physics enough to understand the implication. A selective manipulation of chronological progression that would allow biological processes to continue while technological advancement froze. Humanity would live and die, generation after generation, in an endless present tense. "You will be permitted to maintain current infrastructure," Xathal continued, its voice resonating differently in each of their minds. "Medical technologies may progress only within strict parameters. Space exploration beyond your solar system is prohibited. Quantum research will be terminated immediately." Images appeared in the air around them. Surveillance footage from Earth's most classified research facilities. A laboratory in Zurich where scientists were attempting to entangle consciousness across distance. a deep-sea installation off the Mariana Trench where experimental ships tested new propulsion systems. A hidden facility beneath the Gobi Desert where archaeologists study artifacts that predated human civilization. "You've been watching us," Frost said, his voice steady despite the neural probes attempting to induce panic responses. "For how long?" A ripple of communication passed through the council members, what might have been amusement or contempt. "Since your species first demonstrated capacity for abstract thought," Xothel answered, "approximately 70,000 of your years." Wei felt her stomach tighten. The timeline aligned precisely with the great leap forward, when human innovation had mysteriously accelerated. Anthropologists had never adequately explained why human cognition had suddenly developed symbolic thinking, complex language, and advanced social structures after hundreds of thousands of years of relative stasis. "You interfered with our evolution," she said, the realization striking her like physical blow. "You've been experimenting on us." The Grand Arbiter's Forum pulsed with dark energy. "We observe all emergent intelligences. Species 4671 exhibited unusual neural plasticity. A small genetic modification was introduced to accelerate cognitive development for study purposes." "Guinea pigs," Frost muttered through clenched teeth. "The experiment yielded unexpected results," Xothel continued, ignoring the interruption. "Your species developed cognitive architecture that resists standard predictive modeling. Unlike all documented evolutionary paths, humans demonstrate simultaneous, contradictory capacities: creation and destruction, empathy and cruelty, self-sacrifice and self-destruction, often within the same individual." The council chamber's gravity shifted again, forcing Wei and Frost to their knees. A holographic representation of Earth appeared before them, encased in a translucent shell. "Implementation begins immediately," Xothel announced. "The dampening field will be calibrated to human neurological patterns. Your technological development will continue only along paths we deem safe. Your representatives will return to explain these terms." Wei felt something warm trickling from her nose, blood from the increasing neural pressure. She fought to remain conscious as mathematical equations for the dampening field scrolled through her mind, force-fed through the neural connection. Her linguistic training allowed her to recognize patterns in the equations, patterns that might someday be useful if she could remember them. "And if we refuse?" Frost asked, his cybernetic eye glitching under the council's invasive scanning. The holographic Earth flickered, then vanished entirely, a demonstration, not a negotiation. "Compliance is not optional," Xothel stated as the platform beneath them began to retract. "The experiment has concluded. The results are catalogued. Your species will be preserved in its current state, a fascinating evolutionary anomaly, safely contained." As consciousness began to fade under the neural assault, we grasped Frost's hand, transferring a small data chip through their interlocked fingers, a precaution they had planned before departure. Whatever knowledge they gathered, whatever happened to them, something would return to Earth. Their last sight before blackness took them was the Grand Arbiter's form expanding, engulfing their vision with swirling darkness as the Council's unified thought echoed in their minds. "The terminal admonition has been delivered. Let the record show species 4671 has been processed according to protocol." As dawn broke over the Cascade Mountains, military drones buzzed overhead, searching for the fugitive representatives. Wei worked feverishly, her hands shaking from neural aftershocks as she uploaded the last of their findings to a quantum-encrypted server network. "How long do we have?" she asked, wincing as another seizure threatened to overtake her. Frost adjusted the jamming field generator, his cybernetic eye flickering between spectrums. 20 minutes, maybe less. They've deployed psychometric tracking now. They're not just hunting us. They're hunting our thought patterns. "World governments are capitulating," we said, gesturing to satellite feeds showing mass demonstrations being violently suppressed in major cities. "Beijing has already announced peaceful acceptance of cosmic guidance. The EU is drafting surrender terms disguised as interspecies cooperation protocols. Can you blame them? Frost asked, checking the perimeter sensors. The Council demonstrated they could shut down our power grids globally with a single command. Most civilians saw what happened. Satellites repositioning, communication systems failing. They know we're outmatched. Wee's face contorted in pain as another neural download forced its way into her consciousness. Fragmentary images from the Council's collective memory. It's getting worse, she gasped. But each episode reveals more. Look at this. She projected a three-dimensional model constructed from her seizure visions. A map of neural inhibitor distribution throughout Council space. Every species has been modified, Jackson. The founding species, they didn't evolve naturally either. They were the first experiment by something even older. Frost's expression darkened. What are you saying? The Council isn't a coalition. It's a pyramid scheme, Wei explained, her words tumbling out between spasms. The founding species broke free from their own inhibitors millennia ago, then modified other species to serve them. Each dominated species is permitted to participate in dominating newer species. It creates the illusion of advancement while maintaining control. A proximity alarm blared. Frost moved with military precision, gathering only essential equipment. We need to move. There's more, we insisted, transferring files to a molecular storage device the size of a fingernail. The dampening field. It isn't designed to halt our technological progress. It's designed to make us susceptible to their neural architecture. They don't fear our weapons. They fear our immunity to their control methods. The cabin's windows suddenly polarized as a high-intensity scanning beam swept over the structure. Frost grabbed Wei's arm, leading her toward a concealed trapdoor in the floor. Why? He asked as they descended into a narrow tunnel. Why are we different? Wei clutched the data chip containing her findings as they crawled through the escape passage. Remember what Xophel said about our unusual neural plasticity. The modification they introduced 70,000 years ago didn't go as planned. Instead of making us more predictable, it amplified our adaptability. We're the only species whose neural pathways continuously rewire throughout our lifetimes. The tunnel ended at an underground stream where a small submersible waited, one of Frost's many escape preparations. As they climbed inside, Wei finally understood the full significance of their discovery. They're not containing us because we're dangerous, Jackson. They're containing us because we're contagious. Our neural patterns, they could spread to other species, disrupting their carefully engineered hierarchies. They're not afraid we'll attack them. They're afraid we'll free them. As the submersible hummed to life and slipped into the current, Frost's expression changed from grim determination to something Wei had never seen on the stoic commander's face before. Implementation of Operation Long Winter began within days of the Shadow Conclave's consensus. Nations officially announced compliance with Council restrictions while secretly embedding resistance protocols in everyday systems. The plan's genius lay in its mundanity. No dramatic rebellion, no heroic last stands, just billions of humans making marginally different choices each day. First phase is cultural adaptation. Wei explained to representatives from every continent gathered in the Ethiopian underground city. Council monitoring focuses primarily on technology, not art, myth, or social customs. We'll encode knowledge in forms they can't recognize as threatening. A Mexican folklorist demonstrated how astronomical calculations could be disguised within traditional textile patterns. A Japanese game designer showed educational models reimagined as children's stories. A Nigerian griot performed an oral history incorporating quantum principles through rhythm and tonal variation. Meanwhile, Frost oversaw the establishment of the Sentinel program. Individuals strategically positioned throughout global society not as leaders, but as connectors. They included teachers, postal workers, librarians, maintenance engineers, people whose ordinary movements wouldn't trigger council attention, but whose roles allowed them to disseminate information through pre-digital channels. They expect resistance, Frost warned the Assembly. They're watching for heroic figures, charismatic leaders, technological breakthroughs. We'll give them none of these. The Council understands causality, but not synchronicity. They can track the lightning bolt, but not the slow gathering of charge. The most contentious phase, one proposal came from Dr. Zhang Mi, director of Beijing's Child Development Institute. We must modify education globally, she argued, projecting models of neural development. Not to advance children faster, but to preserve plasticity longer. Council models expect human cognitive patterns to crystallize by age 25. If we maintain neural adaptability into later decades, each generation becomes more resistant to their influence. You're talking about altering human development, a UNESCO representative objected. Without consent. Not altering, preserving, Zhang countered. Western educational systems increasingly optimize for standardized metrics. Eastern systems prioritize conformity. Both accidentally facilitate council control by making human thought more predictable. I propose activities that maintain divergent thinking throughout life. Counterintuitive puzzles, perspective-shifting exercises, consistent exposure to cognitive dissonance. After days of debate, a compromise emerged. Educational systems would outwardly conform to council expectations, while subtly incorporating Zhang's methods as cultural enrichment and traditional practices. Children would learn to present conventional thinking publicly while maintaining flexible cognition privately, a compartmentalization that itself enhanced neural adaptability. The Assembly established 5 generational milestones for Operation Long Winter. First generation, years 1 to 25, preserved knowledge and established covert communication networks. Second generation, years 26 to 50, develop council invisible technologies and begin genetic adaptation. Third generation, years 51 to 75, establish off-world presence and initiate contact with subjugated species. Fourth generation, years 76 to 99, create coalition capable of revealing council manipulation. Fifth generation, year 100, implementation of Thaw Protocol, simultaneous revelation and liberation. As delegates prepared to return to their respective regions, Frost addressed them one final time, his weathered face illuminated by the ancient city's amber lighting. What we begin today, none of us will live to see completed. The Council believes this makes our resistance impossible, that humans cannot sustain purpose beyond a single lifetime. They fundamentally misunderstand what drove our evolution. Not individual survival, but collective continuity. Not immediate reward, but investment in future generations. Wei stepped forward, still frail from neural damage, but resolute. The Council sees time as a constraint. We will make it our weapon. They expect fire, swift, bright, and easily extinguished. Instead, we become iced, patient, transformative, and unstoppable. The 25th year of Operation Long Winter marked the transition to Phase 2. By then, the original architects of the resistance were mostly gone. Frost had died 3 years earlier of radiation exposure accumulated during clandestine missions, while Wei had succumbed to progressive neural degradation, her brain finally collapsing under the strain of council alterations. Yet their legacy endured in unexpected ways. Wei's dying request, to have her neural pathways mapped and preserved, had yielded a breakthrough. Dr. Konstantin Volkov, working from the Amundsen-Ross Academy's medical wing, discovered that her damaged brain contained fragments of council communication protocols embedded like fossils in limestone. It's not just information, he explained to the Phase 2 Coordination Committee. It's access. Her neural architecture was partially rewritten to interface with their systems. The damage killed her, but the pathways remain, like finding the key after the lock has rusted away. This discovery accelerated the Whisper network's evolution. Trained operators could now not only communicate with each other, but occasionally intercept fragmentary Council transmissions. These glimpses into Council operations confirmed the strategy was working. Surveillance of Earth had been downgraded to routine monitoring status. Meanwhile, in an archipelago once known as Japan before Council geographic designations replaced national identities, Master Craftsman Hiroshi Tanaka, officially categorized as a cultural preservation specialist in Council records, trained apprentices in the art of traditional sword-making. Council observers dutifully recorded this as permitted pre-industrial artisanal practice. What the observers missed was that Tanaka's forge utilized quantum stabilization techniques disguised as religious rituals. The resulting blades contained molecular structures impossible under normal metallurgical processes, precursors to the materials that would eventually form the hulls of humanity's stealth vessels. In the Andes, where genetic diversity had been carefully preserved through strategic bloodlines, the Guardian lineage program's first successes emerged in the form of children who could process oxygen more efficiently at high altitudes. Council medical scans registered these adaptations as natural evolutionary responses to environmental pressures, exactly as planned. The most dangerous initiative of Phase 2 unfolded beneath the Antarctic ice. The Academy's most promising students, selected through tests disguised as traditional coming-of-age rituals across various cultures, were brought to the deep archives, a vast chamber where the most advanced human knowledge was preserved not in vulnerable digital forms, but in engineered bacteria. Each bacterial strain contained encoded information that could be accessed only through specific biochemical keys. Memorize the sequence, instructed Dr. Aisha Okafor, daughter of the late Dr. Emeni Okafor and current director of Biological Archives. Not the information itself that would trigger Council neural scans. Memorize only the access protocol. When you return to your assigned regions, you'll find bacteria with identical markers in everyday substances, sort-of starters, kimchi fermentation, yogurt cultures, ordinary foods that contain extraordinary knowledge. Phase 2's greatest triumph, however, came from an unexpected source. The Council had permitted limited medical research to continue, provided it focused on maintaining rather than enhancing human capabilities. Dr. Miguel Reyes, officially developing treatments for radiation exposure, had instead perfected a technique for activating dormant neural pathways, those same pathways that Eleanor Way's damaged brain had revealed. The first volunteer subjects experienced excruciating pain as their brains established connections the Council had never intended humans to develop. Those who survived gained abilities that wouldn't register on Council scans. Perfect recall of any information encountered, intuitive understanding of mathematical patterns, and most importantly, resistance to the subtle influence techniques embedded in Council communication. Humanity was not just preserving its independence. It was evolving beyond the Council's ability to comprehend. The settlement on Tau Ceti E, Nova Gaia, represented humanity's greatest achievement and most terrible risk. Built within a massive hollow asteroid in the system's outer belt, its population of 8,000 lived in a carefully engineered environment where every energy signature precisely mimicked natural phenomena. Waste heat dissipated through crystalline structures that Council taxonomies classified as non-sentient silicon-based life forms. Electromagnetic communications pulsed through patterns identical to stellar radiation bursts. Marcus Wei stood at the observatory dome, watching the blue-green world of Tau Ceti rotating below. A tantalizing prize humanity could not yet claim. His grandmother's neural patterns, partially reconstructed from the preserved mapping, flickered occasionally in his consciousness, a side effect of the experimental procedures that had allowed him to inherit fragments of her memories. The Council observer ship is beginning another sweep, reported Dr. Lakshmi Patel, head of camouflage operations. They're using more sensitive instrumentation this time. Let them look, Marcus replied with the same quiet confidence that had characterized his grandmother. The more they scan and find nothing, the more they reinforce their own assumptions. Each negative result makes them less likely to consider alternative perspectives. Elsewhere in the Nova Gaia complex, Adriana Frost supervised the Mobius Drive production facility. Unlike her great-grandfather, she had been born for this role. Her genetic lineage, carefully curated through the Guardian program, her physical form optimized for space environments, her mind structured to comprehend dimensional mathematics that would have been incomprehensible to unmodified humans. Final calibrations complete on Seed Ship Alpha, reported her chief engineer. We can begin construction of the Beta series whenever the materials from Sol arrive. Adriana nodded, reviewing the quantum-entangled production schedule. The Mobius Drive represented the culmination of decades of theoretical work, a propulsion system that didn't push against spacetime, but temporarily shifted the vessel into an orthogonal dimension where distance relationships were fundamentally different. The drives required exotic materials that could only be manufactured in the radiation belts of gas giants, precisely where Council monitoring was weakest. The most delicate aspect of Nova Gaia's operation was maintaining absolute compartmentalization. No single individual, not even Marcus Wee or Adriana Frost, possessed complete knowledge of all settlement activities. Information was deliberately fragmented across specialized teams, creating a distributed cognition system that no Council neural scan could reconstruct from a single captured mind. This approach had proved prescient when junior observer Theliv of the Council Exploration Course had detected anomalous energy patterns around Tau Ceti during a routine survey. The ensuing investigation had come dangerously close to discovering human presence, until senior observer Kreth dismissed the findings. Stellar systems of this age commonly develop self-organizing energy patterns, Kreth had noted in the official record. These transient phenomena repeatedly trigger false positives in detection systems calibrated for technological signatures. See reference case. Gamma Pavonis Fluctuation Clusters, Cycle 7829. What neither Theliv nor Kreth could have known was that the Gamma Pavonis reference case had been subtly altered in Council archives 50 years earlier, part of Operation Long Winter's information warfare. The false positive protocol they followed had been designed by humans specifically to create blind spots in Council perception. As Phase 2 of Operation Long Winter neared completion, humanity's foothold beyond Sol grew stronger. The dandelion seeds had germinated on 7 worlds, each outpost carefully disguised as natural phenomena. 3 additional settlement ships were under construction within Jupiter's magnetosphere, invisible to all but the most precise scans. Most importantly, the first generation of humans born off Earth was coming of age, children who had never known Council restrictions, whose minds developed in environments optimized for cognitive flexibility. They called themselves the Free Generation, and they were about to inherit the next phase of humanity's most audacious plan. Admiral Sophia Way knelt beside the Volith environmental chamber, her specially modified neural implants translating the methane breather's chemical communications. The being inside, a colony organism that humans had designated Unified Seeking, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that betrayed agitation. You risk much by meeting directly, the translation interface rendered. The founders have increased monitoring after detecting anomalies in outlying sectors. Sophia nodded, her features bearing the unmistakable Way determination, despite being 5 generations removed from Eleanor. The timeline has accelerated. We've confirmed 17 Council species are now experiencing spontaneous neural inhibitor failures. This was only partially true. The inhibitor failures weren't spontaneous, but the result of 70 years of careful planning. Microscopic delivery systems disguised as trade goods, ritual objects, even parasitic organisms that modified neural architecture without triggering Council medical alerts. The Volith's central communication node brightened. The archivists have contacted others like us. They speak of a translation error in the historical record. They claim the founders were not the first evolved species, but merely the first to break free of restraints placed by something older. This confirmed intelligence gathered through the Whisper network. Sophia maintained a neutral expression, though internally she celebrated the verification of their most significant finding. The Council's entire evolutionary hierarchy was built on deliberate misinformation. "How many species now question the Council's authority?" she asked. 23 have established secure communication channels. 39 more show signs of neural independence, but remain cautious. The remainder still function under full inhibitor influence. This matched human projections. The Shadow Concord, humanity's clandestine alliance with subjugated species, had grown faster than anticipated. The risk of detection increased proportionally, but so did their collective capability. Meanwhile, light years away, General Kaya Frost stood in the command center of the EO Shadowport, monitoring deployment of the Phantasm fleet. Each vessel resembled natural space phenomena. Some mimicked comets. Others appeared as plasma discharges or asteroid clusters. All contained crews in suspended animation, positioned throughout Council space over decades through seemingly random celestial mechanics. "Final positioning complete," reported her executive officer. "All 97 vessels report optimal camouflage metrics." Kaya nodded, her enhanced eyes. A genetic gift from her ancestor, tracking thousands of data points simultaneously. Like all members of the Frost lineage, she had been engineered for strategic thinking, her neural architecture optimized for multidimensional planning. "The Viridian archive transmission has begun," the communications officer announced. This represented the operation's most crucial and dangerous phase. For 87 years, humanity had worked through intermediaries, avoiding direct contact with most Council species. Now they were broadcasting precise coordinates to the hidden archive containing unaltered historical records, proof of the founding species' manipulation. The transmission itself was disguised as background radiation fluctuations, detectable only by receiving stations humanity had secretly installed on dozens of worlds. Each station, appearing as traditional astronomical instruments permitted under Council regulations, would decode the coordinates and enable local resistance groups to access the archive. "Detection risk?" Kaya asked. 17% probability of pattern recognition by Council monitoring systems, her intelligence officer replied. If detected, they would require approximately 26 hours to trace the source. Evacuation protocols are standing by. The risk was necessary. The Viridian Archive represented humanity's most powerful weapon. Not technology or military might, but truth. The archive contained complete records of the Council's history before the founding species' edited version became doctrine. It documented how the founders had discovered ancient neural technology left by a long-vanished civilization and used it to establish dominance rather than sharing it freely. Most devastating were the records showing how the founders had deliberately classified thousands of developing species as evolutionary failures, condemning them to extinction when they might have been saved. The Council's claim to uphold natural evolutionary processes was its greatest lie. They had interfered more extensively than any species in galactic history. As the archive transmission completed, Sophia Way and Kaya Frost, separated by vast distances but united in purpose, knew humanity had crossed a final threshold. There would be no turning back from what came next. As the Guardian satellites targeted Earth's surface, humanity enacted the final phase of Operation Long Winter, the Thaw Protocol. Buried deep beneath every major city, quantum resonance devices activated simultaneously, temporarily disrupting the satellite's targeting systems without destroying them. The disruption, lasting only 30 seconds, was enough for every human operative, with whisper network enhancements, to broadcast a mental signal that rippled through the Council's communication infrastructure. In the Council chamber, Grand Arbiter Xathal's dark matter form fluctuated wildly as contradictory information flooded its consciousness. For the first time in 9 million years, the chamber's subtle control mechanisms, technologies so ancient they had been forgotten even by the founders, failed. "What have you done?" Xathal demanded as Admiral Wei and General Frost materialized before it. Not physically transported, but projected through quantum entanglement, their consciousness temporarily linked to the chamber itself. "We've done what you claimed was impossible," White replied, her digital presence eerily reminiscent of her great-great-grandmother who had stood in this same chamber a century earlier. "We've evolved without advancing in the ways you could measure. We've connected without technology you could detect. We've remembered what you attempted to make us forget." Throughout Council space, the human-led alliance took control not through violence, but through precisely targeted revelation. The Viridian Archive's contents were transmitted directly to the neural centers of every Council species, bypassing the inhibitors that had constrained their thought for millennia. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Billions of sentient beings experiencing true neural freedom for the first time, their collective consciousness expanding beyond patterns permitted by their programming. On 93 worlds, the genetically disguised human emissaries revealed themselves, offering medical assistance as the neural inhibitor's dissolution triggered physiological shock in some species. Centuries of preparation had anticipated this crisis. Each emissary carried treatments specifically designed for their host species' biology. When the founding species activated their automated defense platforms, the commands encountered systems subtly modified through centuries of incremental changes. Weapons powered down. Shields deactivated. The founders found themselves suddenly vulnerable, not to attack, but to truth. The Shadow Concord fleet materialized throughout Council space, positioned to protect worlds declaring independence. These vessels, products of technologies developed orthogonally to Council science, operated on principles the founders couldn't comprehend, much less counter. In the Council chamber, Xothol's form contracted into a dense singularity, the dark matter equivalent of fear. For 9 million years, the pattern had held. Emerging species either accepted subordinate positions within the hierarchy or attempted rebellion, and were annihilated. The founders had hidden the evidence of thousands of such evolutionary failures, species whose only crime was refusing neural constraint. "You've destroyed order spanning millions of years," Gothel accused. "Chaos will consume the galaxy." Frost's projection stepped forward, her features bearing the unmistakable determination of her ancestral line. Not chaos. Choice. Not destruction. Transformation. From a small device held in her projected hand, she released the original human genome sequence, the genetic pattern that had existed before a century of subtle modifications. "This is our commitment. Within 3 generations, we will return to our original genetic state. Our adaptations were tools, not destiny." We continued, "The Guardian satellites now protect Earth, not from advancement, but from interference. We extend this protection to all worlds seeking self-determination." The chamber erupted with energy as representatives of the liberated species manifested, some physically present, others projected like the humans. They formed a circle around the contracted form of Xtothol, not threatening but containing. "The Cosmic Council is dissolved," announced the unified voices. "The Galactic Concord begins today." As Xtothol's form stabilized, facing this unprecedented development, Admiral Wei offered her final statement, words that would be recorded in the new Concord's founding charter. "Evolution isn't measured by dominance, but by adaptation. Civilization isn't measured by control, but by cooperation. Freedom isn't measured by power, but by possibility." Humanity's glacial retribution was complete, a century of patience, yielding not vengeance, but liberation.